three guest speakers here. I'll start from my left. Matt, all right, for Fisherman's Magazine. Captain Ken, Captree Pride, and a few other boats, not to mention. And Captain Dave from the Viking Fleet in Montauk, New York. And I'm your host, Joe Felicia. I'm glad to see you here. This is the first show, so I didn't expect a large crowd, but we're giving it a try for this year. Matt, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what your favorite fish to try to catch would be?
This is live?
Yes, everything's live.
Hey guys, Matt Broderick, Fisherman Magazine. Pretty much if anything to do with fishing, I'm not opposed to it. Kayak, boats, surf, even fly fishing, freshwater, whatever it may be, you know, I'm down for it. All over the island, northeast area, whatever it is, I'm gonna do it. As far as like what my favorite species goes, I was always a big fan of targeting striped bass from the surf. Kind of transitioned. I still do a lot of striped bass surf fishing, but I have become a big fan of tog fishing from the shore and from the boat more recently. Almost like an addiction, if you will. It's a lot of fun. If you guys haven't tried it before from either the boat or the surf, I suggest you try it out.
Captain Ken,
Yes.
same question, please.
I run boats out of Captree. Been running boats there since about 1978. And that's it. We mostly fish fluke, sea bass, porgies, striped bass, some bonita, albacore, and tuna fishing. I enjoy blackfishing more than anything else. And I like to fish down in the winter in Florida. Tarpon, snook, grouper, snook, stuff like that.
So you can see yourself all around boat fisherman, or?
Yeah, mostly. I used to fish off the beach of Montauk for years and years. I loved it, but I just don't have the time anymore.
Columbus Day striping line, I guess.
Yeah.
Captain Dave, I don't know you personally, but I have a lot of recommendations.
Hi, Captain Dave.
A lot around.
Montauk. I've been fishing with the fleet now 35 years. Same job, same boat. I do mostly porgy, sea bass, codfish, and that's usually my thing. But I have done the tiles, a lot of cod fishing back in the day. Unfortunately, cod fishing isn't what it used to be anymore. That's my favorite fishing, I believe, is cod fishing. I enjoy that more than anything, especially when you get bigger ones, which you don't seem to see no more.
Okay, listen, I do have a couple of questions from people that email me, because they were able to email this. I'll just give you one. Basically, it's one that I get a lot of phone calls, because I work down at Captree with Kenny. I have a 10-year-old son. I would like to take him fishing. What would you recommend? I know nothing about fishing. Anybody?
I like taking the younger kids porgy fishing myself. Just the action. You're always getting bites. The kids don't get bored because they tend to get bored very quickly now. So if you don't have that constant action, they seem to go inside and sit down. But porgy fishing's probably the best bang for your buck.
Porgy?
I think so.
What do you think?
I'd have to agree. Porgy, sea bass out of Captree. We get a lot of sea bass the first month. It's great action. Our bread and butter, like not so much my boats, a lot of boats fishing the bait and fluke. It's some action, sea robins, fluke, gets them started, but it's not as much action packed as porgies and sea bass. Absolutely. For kids to get a lot of action, sea bass, porgies.
You recommend more with porgy, sea bass combination?
To keep them active, yeah.
Is a bottom fish, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
yep.
So it's basically baits or clams?
Yeah, clams to the bottom, yep.
Clams to the bottom, double hook, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Do you have any insight about teaching somebody young?
Yeah, I do. So basically what these guys both said right here, great way to start a younger person getting into fishing for the first time would have to be like porgies. Again, the action's there. What I've always noticed with like the younger generation is I like to get them started with something where there is a lot of action. And then after that, I teach them a kind of fishing where there is some sort of patience involved afterwards, more like striped bass fishing, or there is some patience involved in fluke fishing too. So they kind of graduate from maybe snappers to porgies to striped bass, or to fluke to striped bass, something along that sequence of events.
Well, as the panel knows, I'm very involved with kids fishing, getting them started. This is my game system. I don't charge for it. I want the kids to get that experience. of that adrenaline that we all get when we're fishing. We can start them off. This kind of breaks the gap between a video game and the real thing. So I really push to get kids involved, and I wish everybody in this room would do the same thing. We need our kids involved in an outdoor sport. Agree, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Bottom fishing. Everybody likes Fluke. Everybody, that's what they want to target. Tourists, everyday fishermen. What would you recommend? Now that mostly a lot of the baits have been changing over the last couple of years, we're going more with artificials. What would you think?
I do like using that gulp bait for fluking, that long sand eel ones. They seem to work very well. I'm a pretty simple fisherman. I actually like to use sea robin fillet or something for the bigger ones. I enjoy fluke fishing, but like I said, it takes some patience to be a good fluke fisherman.
Kenny?
Same thing. We like our go-to rig now in the ocean is like a sinker and two hooks with a big gulp on it. You don't, no bait. Bait's like a waste of time, but long strip of squid, yes. Long strip of fluke belly, strip of bluefish. Works great just by itself, you know, around the rocks and stuff. But the gulp seems to work better than anything. Like 5, 10 to 1. For keepers especially. You know, we go to the rocks and stuff, catch 300 fluke. 99% of the keepers are caught on the guys that know how to fish gulp. The lighter braid seems to make a big difference. Guys with the spinning rods out fish the conventional rods.
I know you're more surf casting, so that question is more towards you about the surf casting. You can add if you're boat fishing.
I do some boat fishing now. I do have a boat, so I got into my light tackle, fluke fishing from the boat. Again, and agreeing with these guys again, a lot of my fluke fishing is light tackle, high-low rig. I like to use artificials like gulp. Fish bites are another great artificial, on par with gulp in my opinion. Again, I seem to do very well. Once in a while, when they are keyed in on a specific bait, like peanut bunker, once in a while, I have found that if I'm able to cast net some peanut bunker and send them down, the size of the fluke I am catching seems to go up a little bit as compared to if I were to use artificials. But most of the time, 90%, I'd say, my fluking light tackle is with artificials.
I would say, you say fluking, like in our bay, a lot of times the old conventional hook and a long lead, especially when you drift fast, sometimes it works better than the gulp. In the bay, not so much in the ocean. But when there's a fast...
Question, and I get asked a lot. My little capacities all over the place. How long should that be off the sinker, the line? And does the current matter?
Current matters. When the current runs hard, you need to have a long leader and drag a bait as opposed to fish and gulp. When you use a gulp, you just put a little short drop-a-loop, 2 drop-a-loop through a hook, and, chicken rig. But when there's a lot of current, it doesn't work quite as good.
Well, this Captain Kenny, he basically sails out of Captain. Now let's go to Montauk view.
Different.
Completely different.
Yeah, we see some bigger fish. Like I said, I do like to use fresh meat for the bigger fish. Sea robin works good. Slice of bluefish, excellent. Something good and oily. As long as the dogs aren't around, that's the way to go. Big piece of meat for a big fish. Like I said, smaller fish in the rips, bounce that gulp around. But for the bigger ones, I do like the meat.
Okay. Now, any questions about fluke before we switch to one of my favorites, striped bass? Any questions? Let's see. Let's see here. All right, this next question from the email. Okay, this is from Paul. Where is Paul, Mr. Paul? North Babylon, right around the block. I live in North Babylon and I like to start surf fishing. Where are some good surf casting beaches on the South Shore?
So along the South Shore, again, almost all of it is pretty good structure for surf casting. Anywhere from Montauk all the way out to West End, out to the Rockaways. Really, it's all about going out to the beach and scouting out the structure. You're looking for those breaks in the bars, the groins, the jetties, all around there. That's all great areas to fish as well. Being that this gentleman is from North Babylon, the Fire Island Inlet area is another great spot as well. Democrat Point, Sore Thumb, even on the inside by the bridge can be really good and productive, especially in the spring and during the month of May when the bluefish show up. You got a good shot to get into them in the Fire Island Inlet area from the surf.
These questions I got, they will be answered in the next couple of days on my website, fishermansfleamarket.com, and also on Facebook and Twitter. So if you want to remember anything that you want to hear again, it will be rebroadcast. Ken?
About surf casting?
Well, yeah, I know you surf cast.
Oh, I used to a lot of it. Well, the thing about surf cans is you want to fish, I think, basically from late April till early July, like on the South Shore, from like West End to like the Hamptons. And Montauk, maybe they last a little longer. You still get a run into, right? Middle July, late July.
Yeah, they run into them.
You know, and then again in the fall, you start from like early September when the mullet leave. Usually get a shot of fish west of the inlets. You know, west of Fire Island Cedar, west of Oranges, because the mullet leave and you get a shot, especially on northeasters. And then later when you get October, November, it's more sand eels and Tina Punka. You know, so the fall and spring is the best time to surf there, especially for stripers.
You mentioned sand eels. I know I hear a lot of people use bumping dumps during the summer. What about the spring and fall? What would you recommend?
There was so much bunk around last year. It's a no-brainer to fish with the bunker. Most people I know fish a lot of officials. So when the bunker around pop is swimming plugs, stuff like that.
Dave, I don't need to leave you out. Trust me.
And the big swim shafts work really good when it's bunker around. And there were a lot of bunker last year, both adult and peanut.
Back in the day, I used to use sandworms in the early part of the
Still
season
great, yeah.
and swim.
April,
That's still the
Yeah,
way
it's
to
like some
go.
of those forgotten baits almost, sandworms, and things that worked back then still do work today. People just forget about it sometimes, so it's good to go back to those old techniques once in a while.
Especially like the last 2 weeks in April, first week in May, along the beaches, guys catching
Absolutely.
a lot of fish. But not many people fish.
One of the spots was like in Montauk along the sand beach earlier in the year. You know, some of the first fish of the fall of the spring would be caught on sandworms on the sand beach in Montauk.
You have anything input, Dave?
Very little surf cast experience. I do it once in a while when it's rough and you can't go fishing on the boat. But other than that, I just cast a bucktail. I like bucktail.
Early spring, North Shore, usually when the striped bass, where I was leading to, so they have my leaders, I prefer to use a small rod, 8 to 10 foot, with a pork rind on a ½ ounce to 1 ounce. What do you think about that? Early season,
What are you talking about, North Shore?
North Shore, early season, 1 ounce sound. Anybody
I
else?
used to fish there a lot, but that's when there was a lot of holdover fish, so you catch them in April like crazy. But I think they fish a lot of bombers over there, you know, like 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce, you know, the plastic lip ones, and bucktails, and the rubber shads, and all of that stuff, you know.
So especially early in the season, you're using a lot of smaller finesse stuff, bucktails, small soft plastics. Like Kenny said, the bombers work really good, especially like the red fins, the jointed 5-inch red fins are excellent too. I know that they used to fish spots like, you know, Crane's Neck and Oldfield Flax Pond back in the day. Those are excellent early season spots.
Crab Meadow.
Crab Meadow
Used to
as
be
well.
great.
You know,
Still good.
It's still good. Yeah, people, you know, just doesn't get talked about as much.
Set, right?
Some of the first places you could fish North Shore early in the year, like, you know, Little Neck Bay, Manhasset Bay. Again, small, jointed plugs, work very slowly. Usually at the top of the tide, you're going to connect with some fish there.
Keeping with striped bass, Captain Dave, on a boat, you know, daytime, nighttime. Montauk is a little different than the South Shore here when it comes to striped bass. What's the best time to go? What do you normally use? Eels, do you use bass assassin?
It's funny. Diamond jig still work very well, especially in the spring and late fall when fishing's good. We're all chasing bait around, and the jigs work very well. I mean, I do quite a bit of trolling with a little boat, just the tubes, you know, an umbrella rig. It all works still very well. It's still produces very well. Later in the fall, which we haven't seen in a while, is that herring and mackerel run. And fish those live in the fall used to be some of the best fish. That hasn't happened in the last few years. I don't know why.
Sorry.
That late fish ain't there.
We haven't seen the herring.
Yeah.
We get the buck until December. We haven't seen the herring in at least 4 or 5 years.
But striped bass by us, like I said, the jigs work fine until the heat of the summer, and then nothing works. And at nighttime, drifting eels is always very productive for big fish. And unfortunately, most of the stuff you catch with the eels now, you got to throw back. It's
35 inches.
It's stupid now. You know, most of the fish that you catch with the eels are all over your 35 feet. Most of it.
Well, we don't do any spring striper fishing per se anymore with the party boats. A little bit we used to do in May, but they don't seem to concentrate in the Fire Island area like they used to. For us anyway, on the party boats, they still catch a lot of fish in our bait, live bait fishing, whatever bait. Of course, bunker, live bait, and they're not supposed to fish with stuff like that. A lot of fish in our bay. And in the fall, we used to get really good jig runs. The last 2 or 3 years, it's been mostly fishing bunker schools. Sometimes you catch them good on jigs. Sometimes you got to snag a bunker to catch them. Other times you catch them on the big storm sheds and stuff. But you got to find a bunker school. We haven't had much, chasing the birds around like we used to.
Anything to add?
What was the question again, Joe?
The question was types of fishing on a boat. Recommendations, time of year, and what's used.
So, a lot of the better striper fishing that I come across happens to be like the later spring, maybe the very beginning of the summer before they move on from that. I like to do a lot of light tackle bucktailing for stripers. What it really is just a bucktail, a light jigging rod. I fish a lot of Montauk too, fishing the rips, pollock rip, the elbow, stuff like that. The fish seem to stack up there pretty well in the later spring and just the beginning of the summer before the water gets too warm and they move on. Again, in the fall time, the fish come around that way again. You get a pretty good run. A lot of small fish blitzing on the north side, same techniques, small bucktails. Sometimes the fish do come up top, and I will plug them with bigger poppers and stuff like that. That can be a lot of fun as well. As they move down to South Shore, I like to fish the South Shore inlets, Shinnecock, Mauritius, Fire Island. Again, live bait in some situations, bunker. There's a lot of bunker around this last fall, so getting some bunker, putting in a live one, redeploying them in the inlets seemed to be a very good technique. Bucktail in the inlets worked the time as well. And even on the North Shore, we were over to the North Shore, like the North Fork and central North Shore area, and we were able to bucktail some stripers up, plug them with top water as well during the fall portion of the year.
Just about last year's striping was very unusual. Montauk had the best spring of that years, right? Diamond jigging like they haven't seen in 20 years. Then the fall they had them, and then the South Shore didn't really have them unless you went west from Jones Inlet to mid-Jersey had the best stripe we've seen in 25 years. Just the way, it depends on where the stripe is settled in. We didn't have the great, we have decent, but not great like we have had. But to the west, they had the best fishing they've seen in 20 years.
Well, I work for the Captain Fleet. I'm in their office, so I answer a lot of questions on the phone. And one I always get is, don't they do bluefish trips anymore?
Not too many. We do them in the spring, casting. We jig them in the bay, down by the inlet in Tenbu, with Kismet, and in the inlet. They're up on top birds. We catch them for about a month. And we didn't catch one bluefish this fall, not one, which is unheard of. Jigging along the beach, on the wrecks. We caught a couple on the Oregon, a couple times we were Bonita and Alba sea bass fishing, but we used to sink the boat on all those spots. Just the bluefish, I don't know where they are, way offshore. I don't know.
Montauk, we used to do quite a bit of blue fishing years back. I mean, it was a mainstay for us, but it seems like everybody wants a striped bass now, and nobody's looking for them no more. We haven't ran a bluefish boat in probably 10 years now. But they are around. Spring
you
museum.
around this year, right?
Yeah, spring was very good, and then we didn't see many in the fall. It was fun. We usually do see quite a few.
I know when I'm sea bass fishing in Montauk, I hate bluefish because by the time I get that fish halfway up, all of a sudden that light line goes dead. That bluefish just chopped it in half. So I've experienced that quite a lot in my boat. All right. Okay. Any more questions about striped bass?
Oh no, I wanted to ask a question about flounder.
Sure.
I know they're rare these days, but over by Kenny's area, there was a couple of good spots. We used to catch some flounder. Saw Thumb, Dickinson's, not anymore. Is it worth
Couple guys will
going?
catch. Definitely not worth it. The last 4 or 5 years, boats trying to capture, if they caught a day with 3, I haven't went for 12 years. They ain't worth it. You know, you're lucky to catch 1 for 20 guys.
Right.
Or a private boat sits all day in Dickinson, chums, they might catch 1.
I was looking at a couple of spots out there, like the Thumb was good, Dickinson.
The only places a few is on, believe it or not, on the wrecks in the ocean in the summer. The mud hole, the party boats in Jersey catch 30, 40 every day. You know, out in 120 feet of water. I don't know. For some reason, they just don't, you know, they don't reproduce and survive in our bay anymore. Maybe the water gets too hot in the summer. I don't know.
That's what I believe, because I see them working, the seals in the harbor is what they were pulling out for. First few years you saw the seals, they were eating flounders, now they're eating skates.
Seals, cormorants, a lot of pressure, the water quality maybe, I don't know. But it went from our best fishery to, there's some on the, they still got a little bit of a fishery on the north side of Cape Cod. They still catch them pretty good there. You know, but, oh, great. Days with 1,000 fish.
Over there in Raritan.
Mauritius, Seneca, Montauk Lake, right?
Montauk Lake.
Rock Island, the Otabowie.
We used to go right to Montauk Lake back in the day.
Petty's Bite on the north side. It's too bad.
Any other thing about bluefish, striped bass fishing? Any questions? Anything?
Look, if you want to catch bluefish early in the year, Smith's Point seems to always get a good run like the first couple of weeks in May. And they're lined up catching them off the shore for like 10 days and they're gone. Yeah, bonita, albacore. Yeah, the last 2 years we had very good bonita and albacore fishing in like the last week in September, first week in October. A couple of yellowfin tuna, bluefin, but that's like not our we're targeting, bonita and albacore. Maybe you get a yellowfin or bluefin mix in. That's fun. People like that trip. That's a good trip, yeah.
And they're limited, I know I prefer the 22-hour trips as long as they got bunks. That's my favorite. Middle of the night, nice and quiet, 18 guys, we're unhappy. Okay, I was going to go right to sea bass and porgy, but I think a lot of people may want to talk more about blackfish, which I feel personally that's the most fish. That fish takes work. It's not you drop a line down and you catch it. You're fighting structures, you're fighting wrecks. So there are some tips, I'm sure they can tell you, about blackfish, finding the structures, basically what to use as bait, Asian crab, perhaps a green crab. Got Dave, what do you think?
Okay, blackfishing is very spot specific. If you're not on the spot, you're not catching them well. I mean, you can get a little trickle coming, you throw your crab legs down and hopefully you get a little something, but you need the tide. Without tide, you usually don't catch them very well. And like I said, you have to be on the spot. You're either right or you're wrong. When you're right, you catch them and you're losing rigs, you know you're right.
And you would say sticky is better.
Sticky is better. If you're not losing sinkers, you're not on the right spot. And you'll see on the boat, like I run a big boat, so maybe 40 foot of the boat will be on the right spot and everybody else is kind of watching. And everybody tries to, get in on it, but it's only so much that are really on the good
Hey,
spot.
move the boat, Cap.
Yeah, right. You got 10 people catching and everybody else is watching. But that's the way it is with that. As far as bait, if you can get them biting that green crab, it's good. Sometimes they're finicky. You have to use your hermit crabs. And
I heard hermit is the best. That's like their filet mignon.
Yeah.
That's great as long as there's not a lot of porgies.
Well, that's it. If there's sea bass or
If
porgies,
there's that stuff around, forget it. They'll just grab it first.
Right.
But the white crabs have worked really
Yep.
good to the west. you know, the white crab is sometimes better. It depends on, every day's different. Like, you gotta have both, you know. And then it's the big thing, jigs worth is the old conventional way of fishing, you know, with a sinker and on the bottom. So, you know, the new jigging is the big thing, right?
Very popular.
That's what
The
everyone
white
likes.
tackle,
I've done
Blackfish
it all the time. Hard with a lot of current, but it's still cool.
I've never heard about it before for a couple of years, but blackfishing from the surf. So I'm gonna bring that to Matt because he seems to be the expert at it. Because I've never really done it myself. You know, striped bass, blues, I fluke off the surf, definitely, but not blackfish. Can you tell us a little about blackfishing? What kind of rig, tackle?
So it's one of those things where typically in the fall I would do a lot of striped bass fishing from the surf. That's usually how it goes. Is the fall comes around, stripers come again, and you have good opportunities to striped bass fish from the surf. Blackfish season also opens up in the fall as well. Now during the very early portions of the fall, more like the first 3 weeks, I'd say, you have a lot of opportunity to get into good blackfishing from shorebound locations, jetties, the entire stretch of the North Shore, around bridges, around pilings, docks, whatever it may be. There is a lot of opportunity to catch blackfish. And the one thing about blackfish versus striped bass is, you know, when the striped bass hits a plug, you basically have them hooked, or, you know, it bites that bait, you have it hooked when you set the hook. Blackfish I consider more of a tactical way of fishing, where you have to know when to set the hook versus, you know, when the striper just hits a plug, it's essentially hooked itself. I believe there's a lot of thinking that's involved with blackfishing from the surf. The fact that you're fighting the fish from two different angles, down and out, also offers an additional challenge. The way a blackfish fights, pound for pound, is better than any other fish out there, also, in my opinion, in the Northeast. That itself is another benefit from fishing for them from the surf. It's a different way of fishing. It's during the day as well. Striped bass fishing can be at night, surf casting, so I do like the day fish once in a while. Easier on the eyes. It's different, and if you do it, you understand, but you have to do it to understand. And once I started doing it, again, if you're catching a fish that's 5 pounds, you're going to have a nice fight on your hand from the surf of the blackfish.
Good, cut this thing off. Okay. Any questions about blackfish? Anything? No. Hook size, bait, anything, guys? Okay. Let's go to sea bass porgy. We'll keep putting it together and then we'll conclude this. All right? My panel said that getting kids involved, sea bass porgy. Give a little explanation of how we do it in Montauk. We've got some water you generally use, Rex, current.
Starting in the spring, we fish up in the bay there. That's where spawners are on. Not structured. They're looking for a certain bottom to lay their eggs and do their spawn. What you do is you just drive around. You kind of look for the pile. You don't look for spots. You just kind of look for the life. And once you get them coming, they usually get better and better once you do get them biting. But in the spring, they don't really want to eat. They're there to spawn. You kind of have to get them to bite first. So you could see them on the screen, and sometimes you wait half an hour till you get them biting. But once you get the baits in there, and they start chewing and start falling off the hooks, and they start coming to you. Like I said, you're not on a piece. You're just in the middle of nowhere. But later on, come early June, you're back on the structure south of the point. Do a lot of shallow water fishing early in the summer. Maybe 20 feet up, along them south beaches on the rocks. Get those big black porgies that time of year. This is my favorite time to catch them because you get the 3, 4, 5 pound stuff, all sea run, dark black porgies. Like I said, the biggest ones you catch pretty much all year is early June to early July. And then after that, the run-of-the-mill stuff kind of piles on everything. Mediums and medium-large mix. Start fishing a little deeper. Still inshore there, but 50 feet, 40, 50 feet along the lighthouse, all that good rocky bottom. And then the sea bass, you get your porgies. Normally sea bass out 70 feet south, any little rock piles you have out there. Kind of get in the deeper water. get up on that hard, on them high pieces and sea bass. Porgies too, but mostly sea bass. Once you get a little into the season, towards the fall, we start heading towards Block Island. They start all filtering that way. Everything from the east comes down that way, and everything from the west all meet kind of somewhere around Block Island. And we fish there later than anybody catches them. December, late in December, we're still catching. Started out not so late. Early November was over, but now we're fishing right till New Year's Eve and still catching stuff out. But you progressively go deeper and deeper. By the end there, we're 120, 140 feet. But very good fishing, and like I said, most bang for the buck. I enjoy porgy fishing. Everybody usually has a good time.
I'd have to agree with the everyone has a good time porgy and sea bass fishing. South Shore, we do 90% sea bass and a little bit of porgy fishing. At times we catch them good. When we first start, our reef is usually red hot for a couple of weeks, and then it gets kind of picked over. And then all the wrecks and rocks, anywhere from 60 to 100 feet, seem good most of the summer. To the west, you got collar banks is usually good to drift around. You get a lot of sea bass. And then as you get later into the fall, they go to 120 foot wrecks and 180 foot wrecks. And then in late November, December, we're fishing 180 to 220. And mostly those giant sea bass out there that you don't have to measure 16 and a half inch fish. When we start, size is going to be 16 and a half inches. We catch tons of sea bass. Catch tons of 16 and a half inch sea bass on the South Shore, no. But plenty of action, plenty of fun. Everyone goes home with dinner, but not as many keepers. And the porgies mix in. At times we get good porgy fishing on our reef. Other times it's slow. A lot of times September, we'll get a couple weeks. You can catch them as fast as you want, the big jumbos. But last year it didn't happen.
Yeah, so as far as porgies go, a lot of my porgy fishing takes place in Peconic Bay during the month of May. You get some nice sized fish in there. They're usually pretty stacked up in piles. You got to find them. Nice additional bonus to the porgies in Peconic Bay is you get some weak fish once in a while in there as well, which is a nice, a side catch, whatever you want to call it. From there, we head out to Montauk. Again, a good bite in Montauk during that June period. Sea bass start to show up. Like once the season opens, we start to catch sea bass right away. Again, Montauk's a great place to target them as well. We get some nice sized sea bass. And progressively, as the fall comes around, it goes later into fall, those sea bass start to move further and further off the South Shore into a little bit deeper water. Those sea bass are also pretty big as well. You can catch them with bait, you can catch them jigging also. They're a ton of fun and they're a great table fare. So between the porgies and the sea bass, great action. Definitely something I enjoy doing on lighter tackle also.
Any questions? Anybody want to ask anything? Any subject, any time? All right. I'm the only one with the big mouth here. All right. I guess you guys know everything. All right. I'd like to thank my panel very much. All right. Captain Dave, I hope to come out to your boat, and definitely fish with you, Captain Kenny. Fortunately, I've known this guy for over 25 years, and I always go on his boat. And that's the Captain Pride out of Captain David, the Viking Fleet. Matt, I'm going to tell you something about Matt. Matt was handpicked by a good friend of mine and the past editor that passed away. And he has proven himself in the fishing community as an asset. So please, subscribe to the Fisherman. His weekly fishing forecast on every Thursday, is it, Matt?
The video's on Thursday, yeah.
Video's on Thursday. Subscribe, watch that video. It's extremely informative. All right? Thank you, gentlemen, again.
Thanks.
Thank you.